Greetings, Michael Didier. Thank you for joining me. You know, so many of the things that we talk about, I guess I talk about, are things that are very, very hard to hear for most people. We talk about Israel's seed. Everybody wants to believe that they're Israel's seed, but they don't understand what it is that makes Israel's seed. We've talked about the Ezra and the Ger so many times. We've got to understand who they are. They are men. They are leaders of their families, leaders of their servants. They are, verse 1, and Moses gathered all the congregation of Israel's seed together. You know, people don't like me even saying Israel's seed. They can tolerate the men of Israel. But it's not about the men of Israel. It is, in a sense, if we're going to talk about multi-generational, spiritually born men. But the Ger aren't part of that. The male servants aren't part of Israel's seed. The men of Israel. So by changing it to Israel's seed, I'm trying to help us understand that we're talking about spiritually born Ezra men. Those are the ones that Yahovah has given his commandments to. Those are the ones that he's coming back right now and asking them to bring a free will offering. Yes, their ladies, their servants can add to that offering, but it's coming through Israel's seed. They are the ones that is bringing it. Even the Ger, it appears to me, is going to bring it through Israel's seed. Look down here. We talked about this last week. We're talking about bringing an offering, bringing a present. That's what we're talking about, bringing a present from a willing heart. Going to bring all the things that we need to build the tabernacle, the things that are in the tabernacle, and the things that are needed to be used by Aaron and his sons for the ministration of the tabernacle. I was going to show you down here. This was something that we saw last week, and it's so easy. When you look at the Hebrew, it talks about Israel's seed at the end, not at the beginning of this verse. They say the children of Israel brought a free will offering to Yahovah. All the men, all the women whose hearts, it's not what it's saying. Every man and every woman whose hearts made them willing to bring the work which Yahovah commanded to be done by the hand of Moses. Israel's seed brought a willing offering to Yahovah. They apparently are bringing it to Israel's seed, and Israel's seed is going to bring it to Yahovah. We're going to talk today about burnt offerings, maybe even mincha offerings. But these are all things that are being done by both the Ger and the Ezra. Really, the Ezra and the Ger who dwell with them. Let's say it like that. Let's try and keep the focus correct. The goal is always to become the Ezra man. If you're a Ger, a Gentile, he wants to become a Ger. The Ger then has the opportunity to become Israel's seed, the spiritually born men. Even man. Remember, it's the plural he. My son, my firstborn is Israel. That's who Israel is. The firstborn son. But it's the second birth that we're talking about, the spiritually born seed, the Ezra men. He didn't let us go until after we became Ezra men. And it says in Numbers 9 that the man who does not come near and renew his covenant with Yahovah at Passover, he's not going to stay in Israel. We've got to maintain our status as Israel's seed, Ezra men. And that is renewed covenant every year. Well, so much to see. I want to just do a quick review of some of the things that we've been talking about last week. He called us. The very first thing he said was, keep the Sabbath. Don't kindle a fire, but he's doing it in the context of all the work that we're going to be doing on the tabernacle. It says the tent, the covering, its clasps, the pillars. He lists everything. All Israel's seed. No, all the congregation of Israel's seed departed from the presence of Moses. Then everyone whose heart was stirred. Remember, we're talking about Ger and Ezra. Those are the men he talks to. Doesn't talk to our woman. We talk to our woman. He doesn't talk to our children. He doesn't talk to our servants. We do that. He's talking to us. What does it say? One law shall be for the native born and for the Ger who dwell with them. Moses talks to the Ezra men and the Ger who dwell with them. That's how it's always been. Now, the women were involved. Look right down here. It says all the women. Oh, really, it doesn't even say all the women. It says, and every woman, gifted artisans, spun with their hands and brought what they had spun of blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. They're spinning, and it's going to go through their man when it comes to the tabernacle, to probably Aholiab, who's going to be in charge of all the things that are going to be woven. So we had Bezalel, and Aholiab. Two men, it says, had the ability to teach. I said, and to direct. He has put in his heart. He and Aholiab. He has given them the ability to direct the work that is going to be done. Yeah, they're going to probably do a lot of it, but they're directing it to make sure it's done correctly. These guys have been given knowledge and understanding and wisdom. So last week we went through the assembly of the tabernacle. Here it is. All the things that needed to be done to it. We talked about the coverings. We talked about the curtains. We talked about everything that was going to be done to create the tabernacle. Then the following chapter, we talked about all the things that are going to be in the tabernacle. The Ark of the Covenant. No, they said that the Ark of the Testimony is how they often will say that. The Testimony's Ark. I like that. The Testimony's Ark. That's what it's all about. Yahovah resides with his word. Makes perfect sense. This is the tabernacle of Yahovah. The Testimony's Ark is in the tabernacle of Yahovah. He dwells over his word. Yahovah is found in his word. They made the cherubim. They made the table of, or the golden table, for the bread. They made the utensils. They made the lampstands. They made the incense, the anointing oil. Then they moved to the outside. They made the the bronze altar. That's where we're going to do all our burnt offerings. The laver, the bronze laver, where the priests are going to wash their feet and their hands. Then they put together the court. And we saw that it was pretty much everything that we talked about in past chapters that Yahovah told us to do, told us how to do it, the dimensions of everything. And it was these two men that went through it all. Okay. Then we talked about the amount of gold that was in the tabernacle. Huge amounts, $10-12 million worth of gold in today's markets. Really, in 3 years ago from today's markets. That was at $993 an ounce. I think we're probably up over $1,400 an ounce at this point. So probably we're talking 15 to 17 million dollars of gold, another $2 million of silver, and about 500,000 in today's market of bronze. That's where we left off last week. Today, we're going to talk about the garments that are being put together for Aaron and his sons, the priests. Here's where we will begin. Of the blue, purple, and scarlet thread, they made garments of ministry for ministering in the holy place, and made the holy garments of Aaron as Jehovah had commanded. This chapter has about 10 times where it says, as Jehovah has commanded. And the next chapter is going to have another 7 times, as Jehovah had commanded. As Jehovah had commanded Moses. That's what it's all about. Learning to do what Jehovah commanded Moses as an Ezra man and as a Ger. Remember, there's different things that the Ezra man does that the Ger doesn't do. We'll see these. We've got to pay attention. Just because it's one law for the Ger and the Ezra doesn't mean they do the same things. Jehovah makes it very clear. The Ezra man's going to do this. The Ger is going to do that. Remember when we went up to the mountain? We were with Moses for 80 plus days. It wasn't the Ger who were there. It was the Ezra men who were there. Israel's seed. That's it. The Ger were back at base camp with the women, the children, the servants, the herds, and the flocks. He made the ephah of gold. This is the first time that gold is being used. It's always been blue and purple and scarlet. For the first time, it's gold that's being used. Now, we talked about gold when we were talking about the instructions. But now we're actually going to do it. Fine woven linen. Remember, that's white linen. Here, I want to show you. This is the high priest. We're going to go back and forth to this today. This is what he's going to look like. We're going to talk about the components of this outfit as we go through it again today. Briefly. We've done it at length before. I don't want to dwell on it too much. He made an ephod of gold. Here's the ephod. Let's go back to the ephod. Talk about the ephod here. This is it. It's 2 portions. It goes off front and back. And it's connected by the belt. The belt of the ephod. He made an ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine woven linen. And they beat the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads to work it in with the blue and purple and scarlet. Isn't that interesting? I wonder if they spun it at all with their fingers, or if they just left it flattened out and cut very thin. Who was it that had the eyes to be able to cut it that thin? I'd love to know and what they cut it with. It'd be neat to see the process by which that's done. And they beat the gold into thin sheets and cut it into threads to work it in with the blue and purple and scarlet thread and the fine linen into artistic designs. And they made shoulder straps for it to couple it together. It was coupled together at its 2 edges. Remember, I said it was front and back, coupled by the straps. It says, and the intricately woven band, this is the belt of the ephod, of his ephod that was on it, was of the same workmanship, woven of gold, blue, purple, scarlet thread, and fine woven linen, as Jehovah had commanded Moses. And they set onyx stones, enclosed in settings of gold. They were engraved as signets are engraved. And the names of, here, what does it say? They put the names of the sons of Israel. It says the names of Israel's seed. This is Shemot. the ancient, it's a feminine ending, but remember in the ancient words, this would be one of the ancient words, Shem, which is all about the name, their names of Israel's seed. It didn't even say sons. Isn't that interesting? But when you think about it, it makes sense, because remember, Ephraim and Manasseh aren't sons. They're seed. They're Joseph's sons, aren't they? But remember, when they got the blessing, it was Israel who said, as Reuben and Simeon are mine, so shall Manasseh and Ephraim be mine. That's how they got adopted into the 12. Joseph, in a sense, got ejected because his seed took his spot with the double blessing. Israel's seed, not Israel's sons. Written on the onyx stones. Here's the onyx stones. I wonder if they're the birth order. They actually went back and forth. This is Simeon, Reuben. Well, Simeon, remember, Reuben is the eldest. Then Simeon, then Levi, then Judah, then Issachar, Zebulun. Is that, yeah, Naphtali. Naphtali, good. Dan, Gad, Asher, Joseph and Benjamin. Last two. So they divided them in such a way that their parent, or their mother, was split. Remember, Joseph and Benjamin both had the same mother. Reuben and Simeon had the same mother. Levi and the next one down, Levi and Judah, all had the same mother. So they got two on one side, two on the other side. Now, it's interesting to see how they potentially divided it. Perhaps that's not how they divided it, but that would make sense, I think. Anyway, wanted you to see what they look like. Let's go back. This is what's on his shoulders, remember. He put them on the shoulders of the ephod as a memorial stones for Israel's seed, as Jehovah had commanded Moses. And he made a breastplate artistically woven like the workmanship of the ephod of gold. There's the gold again, blue, purple, and scarlet. Everything in the tabernacle was gold. Might as well make the priest gold also, I guess. He's the one who is appearing before Jehovah. He's the one who's going to come in behind the curtain on Yom Kippurim. And he made the breastplate artistically woven. He made the breastplate square by doubling it. Hear that? There's a hollow place in the breastplate. That's where the stones are going to be. He made the breastplate square by doubling it. A span was its length, and a span its width when doubled. When doubled. I think we're talking about this. From little finger to tip to finger. So it would be on his chest like that. And they set 4 rows of stones. A row with sardius, topaz, emerald was in the first row. The second row, turquoise, sapphire, and diamond. The third row, jacinth, agate, and amethyst. The fourth row was beryl, onyx, jasper. They were enclosed in settings of gold. In their mountings, there was 12 stones according to the names of Israel's seed. Again, let's double check that. I guess I just fixed it. It's Israel's seed. We already checked it. According to their names, engraved like a signet, each one with its own name according to the 12 tribes. And they made chains for the breastplate. Oh, let's talk about, we're talking about the breastplate right now. Let's show you where that is. I want to go back here to our high priest. Here he is here. This is the breastplate. Now we're going to make chains for the breastplate. There are going to be 2 chains, I believe, that are going to go and attach from the ephod down to this ring, which we're going to add to it eventually also. And they made chains for the breastplate at the ends, like braided cords of pure gold. Chains of pure gold. And they also made 2 settings of gold, and the 2 gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings at the 2 ends of the breastplate. I'm thinking they're talking about the 2 top of the ends here. And they put the 2 braided chains of gold in the 2 rings at the end of the breastplate. And the 2 ends of the braided chain they fastened to the 2 settings, those are the things that are on the shoulders, the onyx stones, and put them on the shoulder straps of the ephod in the front. And they made 2 rings of gold and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate. These are the bottom ends now that they're talking about. On its edge, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the ephod, inward side of the ephod, coming back into this way. And they put 2 gold rings. This is a little tough. They put 2 other gold rings and put them on the 2 shoulder straps underneath the ephod toward the front, right at the seam above the intricately woven band of the ephod. It seems like they're talking about the shoulders. I think they must be talking about under the shoulders. But they're talking about on the edge of the seam above the belt. And this is a very good picture. Let's go back to our picture here. See, here's the gold ring. I wish I could make it just a little bit bigger. I can do this. They put a gold ring here on the edge of this garment above the ephod. And they're going to put a blue cord between this ring and this ring to keep the ephod in place. 21. And they bound the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the ephod with a gold cord, so that it would be above the intricately woven band of the ephod, and that the breastplate would not come loose from the ephod, as Jehovah had commanded Moses. And he made the robe of the ephod of woven work, all of blue. Oh, so cool. Here's the robe of the ephod. This is this blue garment right here. It is a solid piece. Even at the neck, it's got no seams. Somehow they wove it so it all fit together. They said like a coat of mail. We're going to talk about these bells and pomegranates that are going to be at the bottom of this in just a moment. He made the robe of the ephod of woven work, all in blue. And there was an opening in the middle, like the opening of a coat of mail, with a woven binding all around the opening so that it would not tear. They made on the hem of the robe pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet, and a fine woven linen. Blue, purple, scarlet. No gold in this one, but what are we going to have in between each one? We're going to have bells of gold. And they made bells of gold and put the bells between the pomegranates on the hem of the robe, all around between the pomegranates. A bell and a pomegranate, a bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe to minister in, as Jehovah had commanded Moses. You know, I'm looking forward, and I'm probably going to put it on my page today. I'm looking forward to watching a video that a friend sent me talking about government as a religion. You know, the 2 things that we're not supposed to talk about in polite society are what?
Politics and religion.
politics and religion. Why is that? I think it's because politics is religion. I want you to see this video when I put it up. It's only I think it was a 10-minute video, maybe a 15-minute video. But it looked like it was really going to be. I only watched a minute of it, but I thought, oh, this looks very, very interesting. You know, we have priests. They're black-robed priests called judges. And you worship behind those judges. They come into the room, you rise. All be seated. They have the final say. We go to our political conventions, our feasts of the land, and we choose who our new Elohim are going to be. And we follow our Elohim and do the things that everybody's supposed to do because we're trained in the ways that we should go. But we're talking about a new way of life. You know, the things that I have to say, I started by saying the things that I have to say are difficult because you're not just talking about changing a few thoughts, getting rid of Christmas, getting rid of Easter, eating what you think is clean. No, it's a vast and complete change of our lifestyle. As Jehovah commanded Moses. This is why I'm bringing it up. You know, we're looking at these things as Jehovah commanded Moses. We're doing it as Jehovah commanded Moses. But there's so much more that we've got to do. He didn't tell us to do any of this stuff until we left the kingdoms of our birth. Did he? No. Didn't tell the Egyptians to do this. Didn't tell the Americans to do this. He told those who left the kingdom of their birth to do it. Those who had joined themselves to him as Ger and then came into covenant with him as Ezra. Those are the ones that he's commanding to do as Jehovah has commanded Moses. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. They made tunics. Here's the tunic, is what's underneath the blue. This is the tunic here. White, white, white underneath. This is what Aaron's sons are going to wear. This is not what the high priest wears it, but he wears all the robe and the ephod and everything else over the top of it. The other priests just wear this white robe, the whitey-tidies, a hat, not the same kind of hat that the priest wears, but they're still wearing a head covering when they go in to Yehovah. The men of Israel don't wear hats. There's no kippah in Torah. Okay. They made tunics, artistically woven of fine linen. That's all they are, white woven tunics for Aaron and his sons. There it is. A turban of fine linen, exquisite hats of fine linen, short trousers of fine linen, a sash of fine linen, or fine woven linen with blue and purple and scarlet thread made by the weaver as Jehovah had commanded. Then he made the plate of the holy crown of pure gold. He wrote on it the inscriptions like the engraving of a signet. Holiness to Yehovah. That's what it said. Kodesh to Yehovah. Kodesh to Yehovah. And they tied it to a blue cord to fasten it above the turban as Jehovah had commanded Moses. Let me just fix this. I got a note here. I want to make sure that I saw it. Then he tied the blue cord to fasten it above the turban as Jehovah commanded Moses. Thus, all the work of the tabernacle, of the tent of meetings. This is now they're saying the tabernacle of the tent of meetings. The Mishkan of the Ohel of Moed was finished. And Israel's seed, hear that? Israel's seed did according to all that Jehovah commanded Moses. So they did. And they brought the tabernacle to Moses. The tent, the tabernacle, the Mishkan. Then they're going to say the tent and all the furnishings, its clasps, its boards, its bars, its pillars, and its sockets. The coverings of the ram skin dyed red, the coverings of the badger skin, the veil of the coverings, the ark of the testimony and its poles, the mercy seat, the table, the utensils, the showbread, the pure gold lampstand with its lamps, the lamps set in order, all the utensils and the oil for light. The gold altar, the anointing oil, the sweet incense, the screen for the tabernacle door. They're all bringing this to Moses. The bronze altar, it's great. Remember, it was Moses, it was Jehovah who told Moses, and thou shalt make. He didn't make it. Bezalel and Aholiab were the ones who supervised the making of it. But it all comes down to Moses. Just like in our families, it's always going to come down to the man, the head of the family. The sin's on him. The responsibility is on him to see that things are done correctly. The gold altar, the anointing oil, the sweet incense, the screen of the tabernacle door, the bronze altar, the grate of the bronze, its poles and its utensils, the laver with its base, the hangings of the court, its pillars and its sockets, the screen for the court, its cords, its pegs, its utensils for the service and the service of the tabernacle, for the tent of meeting, and the garments of ministry to minister in the holy place. The holy garments for Aaron the priest and his sons' garments to minister as priests, according to all that Jehovah commanded. So Israel's seed did all the work. Remember, everyone there is Israel's seed that's doing that work. And Moses looked over all the work. And indeed, they had done it as Jehovah had commanded. Just so they had done it, and Moses blessed them. That's where it goes right there. He blesses the sons. He blesses the seed. Israel's seed. It was all done as Jehovah had commanded. Oh, so exciting. Now, finally, we're getting ready to put up the tent. Oh, they're going to see there's going to be much more that's going to happen before this tent goes up, before it's dedicated. Remember, they can get this tent up, I'm sure, easily in a day. Easily. They're going to put it up today. Let's take a look. Then Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, the Mishkan of the Ohel of Moed. But in this portion, it does not talk about some things. I put on the right here, all the priests had to go through a 7-day consecration process and then had to be anointed by Moses. How come Moses did not have to go through the process? Why is that? Will the servants of Jehovah in the last days, the 144,000-ish men, will they have to be consecrated the same way as the priests are consecrated? Or is Jehovah going to do something to them like they did to Moses? Perhaps it even happened to Moses the first time he spoke to Jehovah with the burning bush. Was Moses marked at that time as a servant, an Evadim of Yehovah, an Eved of Jehovah? I think he was. Many in Judaism want to restart the temple service, but who is going to consecrate them to function as priests before Yehovah? Do you see the problem? There's so much things that need to be done. Talk about building a temple. Yehovah never talks about building a temple before the great day of Yehovah. I think it's going to happen after the great day of Yehovah. He's got to select his men first so that they can consecrate new priests. He says in Isaiah 66, he will take some of them as Levites and priests. Could the sealing of the 144,000 be their consecration? I think it is. They will be able to anoint other men for the work of Yehovah. Talk about getting your sins turned as white as snow. What does he say? Mark the hearts, or mark the foreheads of those who cry and sigh for the abominations that are being done in the land. These are men who can see. Men who have different eyes. Eyes that most people can't see. Eyes to see things that most people can't see. On the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. You shall put in it the ark of the testimony. Partition off the ark with the veil. Look at it. It's all thou, 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 thou. You, Moses, are responsible to do this. Thou shalt bring in the table and arrange the things that are to be set in order on it. And thou shalt bring in the lampstand and light its lamps. Do you think Moses is doing this all by himself? Or is Moses again being the supervisor to make sure this is all being done correctly? I think he's lighting the lights. He may be setting things on the table in order. But he's not going to be able to carry in the ark of the testimony by himself, is he? Too heavy. Thou shalt set the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the testimony, and put the screen of the door put up the screen of the door of the tabernacle. Then thou shalt set the altar of burnt offering before the door of the tabernacle of the Ohel of Moed. And thou shalt set the laver between the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, I'm sure is what it's going to be there, and the altar, and put water in it. Remember, tent of meeting, tabernacle meeting, they're pretty much the same thing. Until the tabernacle, the Mishkan, was actually set up, though, it was simply called a tent of meeting. It wasn't a tabernacle. It's translated as tabernacle all the time, but there was another tent that they were meeting in. That was the tent that Moses moved outside their base camp at the foot of the mountain, where Israel's seed was for those 80 plus days, and brought it outside the camp. And you shall take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle, all that is in it, and thou shalt hallow it and all its utensils, and it shall be holy. Thou shalt anoint the altar of burnt offerings and all its utensils, and the consecration, and consecrate the altar. The altar shall be most holy. You know, most holy. Usually when we're talking about most holy, it talks about Kodesh, Kodeshim. There it is right there. Kodesh, Kodeshim. That's when something is most holy. It's going to be Kodesh, Kodeshim. If it's just Kodesh, it's holy. If it's Kodesh, Kodeshim, we're talking about most holy. Like Ish, all the men. He's repeating himself to put emphasis on that word. I like being able to see those kinds of things. I was hoping that it would be there. Most holy. And thou shalt anoint the laver and its base, and consecrate it. Thou shalt put the holy garments on Aaron, and anoint him. Sounds like he's dressing. Remember, he's going to wash Aaron. He's going to dress Aaron and anoint Aaron. Consecrate him that he may minister to me as priests. And you shall bring his sons and clothe them with tunics. Thou shalt anoint them as thou anointed their father, that they may minister to me as priests. For their anointing shall surely be an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. Their anointing. I was just thinking, is that the priests who are anointed, are they anointed forever? Or are we talking about their seeds forever? That's how it usually gets interpreted, as their seed forever. But then how does that work? Remember, Yahovah has thrown us all out. We're starting again. When Yahovah brings back Zion, are the people who, the men people, we're always talking about the men people, Ezra men people, who are seed, literal seed of Aaron, are they going to be the priests? Otherwise, why is he taking, I will say, take some of them as Levites and priests? Seems like something's changed, doesn't it? You shall anoint them as you anointed their father, and they shall minister to me as priests. For their anointing shall surely be an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. Thus Moses did according to all that Jehovah commanded him. So he did. And it came to pass in the first month of the second year, look at this, at the first day of the month, first month of the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up. And this is New Moon Day, a day that we have a moed with Yahovah. When was it that Yahovah told Aaron, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up a tabernacle of the Ohel of meetings? When did that happen? You know what? I think it had to happen before the 23rd of the 12th month. Because there's going to be 7 days that the priests are going to be consecrated. We're going to see it in Numbers. There's going to be 7 days that the priests are going to be consecrated before he sets up this tabernacle. It appears to me, actually, I'm not sure. Did they put up the tabernacle and then have the priests in it for 7 days? Or was it just a court that was set up where the priests were for 7 days? The priests were somewhere for 7 days, could not leave it. They were anointing the altar, the burnt offerings altar, the bronze altar, each day for 7 days. We're going to see that again in Numbers. I want to know what happened. Is it possible that this was the day that the ark was, or the tabernacle and the court and everything was ready to go on the first day of the first month? It's unclear. This simply says, we're going to say it, and it came to pass on the first day of the second month, of the first day of the first month of the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up. And Moses raised up the tabernacle. Let me see what my note says. This is the first year. Yasher gave us some light. I like this. This is the first day of the first month. Yasher 83:4 says this. And on the 8th day, you hear that? The 8th day. What's been going on for the past 7 days? Being the first day of the first month, so that means we started probably on the 23rd, was the first of those 7 days, 23rd to the 30th, and then the 8th day being the first day of the new year. In the second year of the Israelites' departure from Egypt, Moses erected the sanctuary, and Moses put up all the furniture in the tabernacle and all the furniture of the sanctuary. And he did all that Jehovah had commanded him. And Moses called to Aaron and his sons, and they brought the burnt offerings and the sin offerings for themselves and Israel's seed, as Jehovah commanded Moses. On that day, the two sons of Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, took strange fire and brought it before Jehovah. This is the day! We don't know it yet, but this is the day that Nadab and Abihu are going to die. Wow! Did it go to their heads? Were they too immature to really grasp what was going on? These are the two older brothers, not the two younger brothers. Wow, there's more to this story. So Moses raised up the tabernacle, fastened its sockets, set up its boards, put in the bars, and raised up all its pillars. What is my thing here? This is the laver. Oh, okay. Here's a rendition of the tabernacle. The bronze laver, the bronze altar. Kind of cool looking. I've got another one here. This is what's being put up. And Moses raised up the tabernacle, fastened its sockets, set up its boards, put in its pillars, raised up its pillars. He spread out the tent over the tabernacle. This is the ohel. He put the ohel over the tabernacle and put the covering of the tent, ohel, on top of it, as Jehovah had commanded Moses. He took the testimony and put it into the ark, inserted the poles. He took that testimony. What's the testimony? It's the two tablets of stone. Put it in the ark. Put the mercy seat on top of it. No, inserted the poles through the rings of the ark. Remember, once he put them in, they never came out again. And put the mercy seat on top of the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle, hung up the veil of the covering, and partitioned off the ark of the testimony as Jehovah had commanded. Now we have a holy place and a most holy place, a Kodesh Kodeshim place. And he put the lampstand of the tent of meeting across from the table on the south side of the tabernacle. The table is on the north side of the tabernacle. The lampstand is on the south side of the tabernacle. As you face the curtain, the lamp's on the left, the table's on the right. And he lit the lamps before Jehovah, as Jehovah had commanded. And he put the gold altar in the tent of meeting, in front of the veil. And he burned sweet incense on it, as Jehovah had commanded Moses. You see how many times he talks about as Jehovah had commanded Moses? This is Moses doing as Jehovah commanded. That's what we got to do. And he put the altar of burnt offerings before the door of the tabernacle, the Mishkan of the ohel of meeting, and offered upon it olah and mincha, as Jehovah had commanded. We're going to talk about olah and mincha, at least olah today. I don't know if we'll make it through the mincha, but we will talk about the olah today. And he set the laver between the ohel of meeting and the altar, and put water there for washing their feet and their hands. And Moses, Aaron, and his son would wash their hands and their feet with the water from it. Whenever they went into the tent of meeting, and when they came near the altar, they washed as Jehovah had commanded. Did you hear that? I always thought they had to wash before they went into the tent of meeting, but they aren't allowed to put anything on the altar, ola, minka, kata'a, nothing, unless they wash first. We have a responsibility as the priests. You got to be clean when you come before Yehovah to work before him. And he raised up the court all around the tabernacle and the altar and hung up the screen of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tent of meetings, and the glory of Yehovah filled the tabernacle, the Mishkan. Isn't that cool? Can you imagine finishing it up and all of a sudden seeing a pillar of fire and smoke appear before the thing that you actually created for him to dwell in? Oh my goodness, Yehovah, you are so good. What a day of excitement. Can you imagine? Yehovah has come to dwell with his people Israel in their midst. Amazing. It says, and Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud rested upon it, and the glory of Yehovah filled the tabernacle. I want to know what that glory is. What is that word for glory, just out of curiosity? And the glory, the kavod, maybe kavod, the kavod, the weight, the splendor, filled the tabernacle. It filled the tabernacle so fully that says that Moses could not enter the tabernacle. Can you imagine? You couldn't go into the smoke. It was so thick. Whenever the cloud was taken up above the tabernacle, Israel's seed would go onward in their journeys. Yes, everybody's going to go, but Israel's seed is the one who's leading them. It's always Israel's seed that's going to lead. Look at this. This is kind of neat. My messenger, he said earlier, will lead you, and I will send Shalach. That's the word Shalach. I will send my messenger, my Melech, before thee. This is Exodus 33. And I will drive out the Canaanite and the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. I put, is the pillar of fire and smoke the messenger? Who's the messenger that he's going to send? Is Joshua potentially the messenger that he's going to send? Remember, it's Joshua who's going to lead us into the promised land to do and drive out these guys. I would have guessed Moses was the messenger. I could see Joshua as being the answer. But I think Yehovah's presence in the pillar of fire and smoke is actually the messenger. Look what it says here. Then Moses said to Yehovah, see, you say to me, bring up this people. This is Moses talking to Yehovah. But you have not let me know whom you will send with me, Shalach with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray, if I have found grace in your sight, show me your way, that I may know you, and that I may find confidence in your sight. And consider that this nation is your people. Remember, we're talking about government. Who's the lawmaker and judge of our nation? Yehovah, who goes before us and goes behind us. Look what he says. And he said, my presence will go with you, and I will give you rest. I think it was the pillar of fire and smoke that went with them, the messenger that went with him. It's his presence. Just my thoughts on the matter. But if the cloud was not taken up, remember when the cloud was taken up, we left. We're going to follow the cloud. He's going to go before us. My messenger will go before you. I will send my messenger before thee. But if the cloud was not taken up, then Israel's seed, they're the they, did not journey till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Jehovah was above the tabernacle by day, and a fire was over it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel, throughout all their journeys. The bet of Israel, Israel's bet. You know, that's easily confused. Who's the house of Israel? They are all the men. We call each other, as your men call each other, brothers, because we are part of the same house. Israel's seed. My son, my firstborn is Israel. They are the Pekor, or the bet. Israel's bet. Israel's house. Throughout their journeys. And if he was over them, he was over their families and the Ger who dwell with them. Well, it's all part of a very beautiful picture. This is the end. We finished Exodus. Our next chapter is Leviticus. Can you believe it? We've been in Exodus for quite some time, haven't we? Not near as long as we were in Genesis. But we're making progress. Some people say, oh no, we're in Leviticus. Boring! You know what? We have so much to learn in Leviticus. And part of learning Leviticus is getting past the religion of it. The religious words that turn people off because they lack understanding. We talked about Moses, and really even before that, we talked about even Enoch, Shem, bringing burnt offering. Then we talked about Noah doing burnt offerings. He did it as soon as he got off the ark. We talked about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob bringing burnt offerings to Jehovah. We're going to find out what exactly a burnt offering is. They didn't have priests in those days. They brought it all to Jehovah themselves. But I think this is pretty interesting to begin to understand. The first chapter of Leviticus is all about the Olah offering. Yeah, all about the Olah offering. But before I go there, I want to just talk about how the Torah is put together. I think this is very interesting. Some of this is writings that was given to me by Glenn McWilliams. I've revised some of it just to refine it a bit, I guess. But let me just read what is here. It says the Hebrew name of this central book of Torah is Yavikra, which means, and he called. This name follows the ancient Near Eastern practice of naming a book after the word or phrase in the opening sentence. Let's go to the opening sentence here. I just want to show you how this comes together. If I go to the Hebrew, here it is right here, and Yod, what did I say? Yod, Vav, Yod, Kaf, Resh, Aleph. Vav, Yod, Kaf, Resh, Aleph. Yavikra. Yavikra. The Yod plays a very important role. Let me explain. This name follows I read that. Let us give the opening lines of all 5 books of the Torah. Here is Bereshit. Bereshit. Here's Ve'elah. Here is Yavikra. Here is Numbers. Va Yadabar. Va Yadabar. Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers all start with the Vav. The beginning of Deuteronomy, however, starts with Elah. Elah. Now, here's what I hear a lot. We should note another interesting pattern that appears in these opening sentences. Note that the opening sentences of the first and the last books of the Torah start with consonants other than the letter Vav. Vav is actually a consonant and a vowel, which the middle 3 books all begin with the letter Vav. Here's what most people say. They say, in this pattern, we see the picture of Torah that can be likened unto a book. The first and the last books of the Torah serve as the cover. This is what we're told. Okay? Just because you're told something, you got to engage your minds. The first and the last books of the Torah serve as the cover. Well, the middle 3 books are the pages bound to the cover by the Vav. How is Deuteronomy bound to anything? I put it in red. I put it in pink because I want us to think differently. Bereshit, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers are all connected. I don't have a book that doesn't have a cover, that's not connected. How is the cover connected to the book? Something's wrong here. And as we go through Deuteronomy, and don't get me wrong, I love Deuteronomy. I used to tell people, read the book of Deuteronomy. If you're going to read anything in the Bible, read the book of Deuteronomy. But you know what? I have found that Deuteronomy has lots and lots of problems. Lots of problems. Way more problems than we ever imagined. Because we don't know Torah. So when we read it in Leviticus, we use that as authoritative. He goes on. Let us also note here that the Hebrew letter Vav in its ancient Hebrew ideograph is a picture of a nail or a hook. When prefixed to a word, as the examples above, the letter Vav serves as a conjunction and. It's something that is connected that, a lot of times it gets translated as but or other. It's conjunction. There it is right there. When the prefix conjunction and. Therefore, we see this pattern that the 3 middle books of the Torah as pages which are nailed or bound to the cover of the book. Yeah, they're bound, they're caught to the cover. In case of the book Vayikra, this connection is no small matter. Okay, it's so implicit that we understand these men are just becoming priests. Now we're learning what the priests are going to do, how they're going to do it. And we're learning so that Israel's seed begins to know and can teach it to the ger who dwell with them how to bring their korban. We're going to talk about korban today, offerings. That's the only word that really should be translated as offerings. Bring their korban to Yehovah. There are many biblical scholars who hold to what is known as the documentary theory. This theory teaches that the Torah was not received by Moses at Mount Sinai, but was put together by many authors and editors over a period of time. It is taught that various independent traditions were preserved and recorded by varying groups, and at a latter date artistically edited together by others. These scholars teach. Now, I was taught when I was in college back in 1976 this very thing in my first Old Testament survey book. I knew nothing in those days. I was so new to Torah, and it was years and years and years before I really began to read it and understand it. Probably as late as 1995, 20 years later. These scholars teach that one group used the name Yahweh or Yehovah, while another group used the name Elohim. I don't think that holds water at all. It is taught that the priestly group from the time of the temple codified the temple service and wrote the priestly material. The priestly material. Is this Leviticus the priestly material? Maybe that's what they're trying to say. I think there is the last chapter, especially in Leviticus, that I think it's chapter 24, that it's got some problems. It's got some challenges. It does seem like it's a bit man-made. It is taught that the priestly group from the time of the temple codified the temple service and wrote the priestly material, including a large portion of Leviticus, and that the Deuteronomists redacted the whole book. The whole book. Are they talking about the whole book of Deuteronomy, or are they talking about the whole Torah? I think it's a little unclear. Wrote the whole book together into a cohesive package we have today. This theory is usually referred to by the initials JEPD. Jehovist, Elohist, priestly, and Deuteronomists. While this theory may at first seem to have merit, careful study provides a great deal of evidence to refute it. You know what? I think careful study, how do I say it, gives it some credibility as it relates to Deuteronomy, not as it relates to Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, or Numbers. I see great continuity between those books. But we will see when we get to Deuteronomy that there are huge problems that flat out contradict the things that we've seen in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Well, let me just finish up this paragraph or whatever's left here. One such piece of evidence is the fact that the portion begins with the letter Vav and the conjunction and. It should be clear from the very opening word of our portion that the book of Leviticus was not written separately from the book of Exodus. I wasn't. They're connected. They're intimately related. The two are, in fact, one continuous narrative. The word and as a conjunction serves to bind the two words, objects, or phrases together, such as soup and sandwiches, love and marriage, black and white. For our portion to begin with the word and implies that it is directly tied to that which precedes it. Deuteronomy doesn't. Well, I want to stop here. The rest of it is just some outlines for the book of Leviticus, I believe. Yes. Okay, let's go back to Torah. Now Jehovah called Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle, from the tent of meeting, the ohel of meeting, saying, speak to who? Israel's seed. say to them, when anyone among you brings an offering, this is interesting, an offering. We see offering hundreds, many hundreds of times in the Torah. And we saw last week, he said to bring a free will offering. It was talking about bringing a turumah from the heart, a present, but they make it an offering. You know what? I want to refine my ideas better than offering. If it says a present, I want to know it's a present. We're going to bring a present, a free will present. Korban is all about, and that's what the word is here, korban. This is the word that actually is an offering. You can bring it as an offering. There's different kinds of korban that we can bring. But we start using these words and they get out of control. So we can't even see it anymore. Look, they say, well, actually, I don't even want to go there yet. We'll get there in the next verse. This is an offering. This is truly an offering. It says a sacrificial present. It can be that. It can be lots of things. It's an offering. It's about drawing near to Yahovah. This is what it's all about. Drawing near. Speak to Israel's seed. Say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to Yahovah, you shall bring your korban of livestock, of the herd, or of the zeon, the flocks. We talk about herd being cattle. Zeon is sheep and goats. If his offering is a burnt from the herd, let him offer a male without blemish, it says. He says a burnt sacrifice. Again, you guys, if it says sacrifice, I would want to say it. But we have all these words that get brought in. And so we see sacrifice, and what have we been taught? Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. We don't have to do sacrifices anymore. Isn't that what we've been taught? By calling it a sacrifice, we discount it all automatically. But this is simply saying if his olah if his korban is an olah from the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. Now, we said it's without blemish. There's so many problems here, you guys. Without blemish, Jesus is the perfect Lamb of God that takes away all the sins in the world. This is what we've been taught. Doesn't have a sin in him. He's without blemish. You guys, without blemish isn't right. This says it shall be a whole male, an alive whole male that he brings to the tent. Whole. Look at, here's the word. Tamim. Entire. Whole is what we're talking about. Sacrifice is an added word. I want to talk about tamim versus mum. Mum is without defect. Actually, mum is defect. But if we have lo mum, we're without defect. This is what we're talking about when we talk about without blemish. This word, tamim, gets translated as without blemish constantly, and it's going to throw you off. It's going to throw you off. You're going to think that if you have an animal that has some kind of a blemish, short leg, eczema, or bad eye, I mean, with that understanding, you can never kill the animal. But Yahovah provides for that. We're talking about a whole male. It says, he, who's he? This is Israel's seed, shall offer it at offer it of his own free will. This is Israel's seed that's bringing this at the door of the tent of meetings before Yehovah. Let's talk about Tamim and Mum, just briefly. I want you to see this. I think it's very important that we see this. Here it says, speak to Aaron and his sons and to all Israel's seed and say to them, whatever man of the house of Israel, there's the house of Israel, or of the strangers in Israel. House of Israel, Ezra man, brother, or of the strangers in Israel. That's the Gerim. Remember, there's one law, two people in Israel, Ger and Ezra. The Ger dwells with the Ezra. Here we're talking about the house of Israel. Who brings his korban? This is the korban, the offering that we're talking about right now, for his own vows or for any of the free will offerings. So we're talking about a vow offering or a free will offering right now, which they offer to Yehovah as a burnt offering. It says, you shall offer, no, here they're bringing it for their vow as a burnt offering. You shall offer of your own free will a tamim male, a whole male. This is what I'm talking about, whole male. This is what we're seeing. From the cattle, from the herd, from the sheep, or from the goats. Whatever has a defect, okay, there it is, defect, in this context of tamim. That's the blemish. That's the spot. That's the thing that's not perfect. Okay, for a vow or a free will offering that we're using as a burnt offering, it can't have a mum, but it's coming to us whole tamim. Whatever has a defect you shall not offer, for it shall not be acceptable on your behalf. Do you see how understanding these things more deeply, it debunks some of these words? I mean, you read them and you think, well, what are they talking about? What word are they using here? Here it says, if a man brings a thanksgiving offering, this is the shalamim, shalem, slaughter, to Yehovah to accomplish a vow of free will. Remember, it's a shalem. We were just talking about a burnt offering to accomplish a vow of free will. Now we're talking about a shalem, the shalamim, slaughter because we're going to eat it, zavek. In beef or flocks, it must be whole tamim to be accepted. It must be completely without mum. Do you see how tamim and mum are two separate words? This is what I want you to see. Check when you see without blemish to understand what is it saying. If it says tamim, we're talking about whole and alive. They're all going to come to Yehovah whole and alive. Everything that we bring to them, we don't bring Yehovah dead meat. We're going to kill it before Yehovah. That's how we're going to do it. But some things have to be without defect, and some things don't. They just have to be whole. He's going to describe defect. Those that are blind or broken or maimed or have an ulcer or eczema or scabs, you shall not offer to Yehovah, nor make an offering by fire of them on the altar to Yehovah. We're talking about what? We're talking about a thanksgiving slaughter for a vow or a free will offering. We're going to get into all of that when we start getting into Leviticus 7. Korban. Here's the word that we're talking about. A generic title for an offering is korban. It means to draw near. It's all about drawing near. This is a free will offering, a vow offering. We don't have to do it. We don't have to bring an olah offering. These are things that we want to do. A sweet aroma to Yehovah. We want to bless him. Remember he said, Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5. No, Exodus 20 doesn't say it in Deuteronomy 5. Exodus 20, it says that those who will do an olah offering, that Yehovah will come to them and be with them and bless them. Woo! Cool. Can we still do it? I think we can. It is this desire to draw near to one another that is behind the general name of these various offerings. The first of the korbanim, or offerings mentioned, is the olah. The olah is all about rising. They call it elevation. It's all about what goes up. It's what's in the smoke that goes up to Yahovah, sweet aroma to him. This is an offering of the herd, the flock, or fowl, with the exception of the hides of the cattle and the sheep and the goats. The hides are going to be given to the priests, with the exception of the hides of the cattle, sheep, and goats, as well as the crops and the gizzards and the feathers of the birds. The whole of the animal is being consumed on the altar. So if we're going to use the birds, we're going to take out the gizzards and strip the feathers before it goes on the fire to Yahovah to be burned up. Olah means the burnt offering, that which goes up is what word study says. Ancient Hebrew lexicon calls it the rising, a rising. We always want to put offering after burnt. I try to read it with just the olah, the shalamim, the minka, so that we don't add to these words. They're not in the text. So let's not add words to the text that aren't there. Let's keep the understanding clear so that we get deeper understandings. By adding things, we muddle our understandings and it makes us harder to go deeper. So I try not to add words where I can. Then he, okay, who's he? Israel's seed. Then he shall put his hand on the head of his olah, and it will be accepted on his behalf to make a covering for him. What did it just say? He shall offer it. Offer it of his own free will at the door of the tabernacle meeting before Yahovah. Before Yahovah. Where's before Yahovah? Is it right outside the door? Where is he going to do this to make it before Yahovah? We're going to see in the next, when we're talking, this is talking about the herd, we're going to talk about the flocks next. We're going to see where before Yahovah is. And he shall kill the bull. Oh, there it is right there. He shall kill the bull, shakat, the bull, before Yahovah. Before Yahovah. And the priests, Aaron's sons, shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood all around the altar. That is by the door of the tabernacle of meetings. It says, he shall skin and the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. Do you see how there's kind of a teamwork going on right now? I think, and you can verify this in other places, I think Levites are working with Israel's seed at this point. Off to the side, we're going to see this is the north of the altar. They're going to have a place where they actually are doing slaughtering. If it's in the court, it's before Yahovah. But there's a specific place in the court that we're supposed to do these slaughters. We saw, this picture right here is a good example. We saw the place where they kept an animal, a little corral. But I'm guessing that right in here, there's going to be a place where you could actually hang an animal up. After you've killed it, drain the blood from it. This has got to be a pretty messy place. Cut it up. Washed it. We got to wash it. And then bring it to the priest to put on the fire. I think the Levites were there to teach Israel's seed exactly how to do this, how to get the right portions, how to cut the fat out of things that needed to have the fat cut of it in the case of the shalomim, how to get the breasts cut, how to get the legs cut, that's going to be given to the priest. I think there's education going on here. Unfortunately, with most of our diagrams, we don't see those kinds of things because we really don't think about what it takes to have all this stuff going on. He shall kill it before Yehovah. He shall skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. Not the skin. The offering is going to cut into pieces. The olah, he's going to cut into pieces. Olah, remember, offering is an added word. Let's remember to take that word out of there. Cut it into pieces. Aaron's seed, the priests. Actually, do they say Aaron's seed? I think they actually say Aaron. No, it's Aaron's seed. They say Aaron's seed, the priests. Aaron's seed, the priests, shall put fire on the altar and lay the wood in order on the fire. Then the priests, now here they say, Aaron's seed again, shall lay the parts, the head, the fat, in order on the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. But he shall wash the entrails, so they're putting the pieces on it. Well, he's washing the entrails. He shall wash the entrails with its legs with the water, and the priest shall burn all on the altar. Burn all on the altar as an olah by fire, a sweet aroma to Yehovah. They said an olah sacrifice, an offering made by fire. No, this says an olah by fire. It's an olah. It's a rising by fire. Remember, it's about what goes up. A sweet aroma to Yehovah. Reminds me of the verse, woe to those who call bitter sweet and sweet bitter. You know, there's people who say, if you do a sacrifice, you're doing a bad thing. Do an olah. You're doing a bad thing because they're thinking about sacrifice. But Yehovah says, every place that you remember him, he will come with you and bless you. So who are you going to believe? I'm going to believe Yehovah. I'm going to do it as Yehovah commanded Moses, as best as I can. Now he's going to switch. If his korban, there's the word korban. If his korban is of the zeon, that's the flocks, of the sheep, or of the goats, as an olah, he shall bring a male, it's always about a male, without blemish. What is the word? Tamim. A whole male is what we're talking about. But look what he says. Oh, and I've got my thing on the wrong side of the verse here. Let me do this. Edit, cuts. Says, he shall kill it. Remember it said before Yehovah, didn't it? Now look what it says. He shall kill it on the north side of the altar before Yehovah. The north side of the altar is before Yehovah. This is where I'm saying that things are going to be killed. Not in front of the altar. That's where the blood is going to be done. That's where the animal parts are going to be left. That's where the fire and the ashes are going to be taken out. To the south of the altar, remember this is the north of the altar, to the south of the altar is probably where the priests are going to bring it onto the altar, or perhaps the west side. Oh, there's so much for us to see. Here, let me just show you this. This is a compass. We were just looking at the altar. Remember, we had the tabernacle, then we had to the right of it, we had the laver, and then we saw the bronze altar, and we talked about what was north of that, where we were going to be having our animals killed, and then we saw the pen. Okay, the tabernacle is always going to face east. So know when you see the tabernacle set up that the front door is facing east. The bronze altar is east of the door. And the gate of the tabernacle is east of that. So I want you to see how it's all oriented. So when we're talking about north of the altar, we're talking about that spot that I was just pointing out to you. It says, again, he shall kill it. He shall cut it on the north side of the altar before Yehovah. And the priests aren't the Aaron's sons, Aaron's seed, shall sprinkle its blood all around the altar. And he shall cut into pieces with its head and its fat. The priest shall lay them, and he shall cut it into pieces with its head and its fat. And the priests shall lay them in order on the wood that is on the fire upon the altar. And he shall wash the entrails. He, again, is the man who's bringing the olah. He shall wash the entrails and the legs with water. And the priests shall bring it all and burn it on the altar. It is an olah by fire, a sweet aroma to Yehovah. No sacrifice, no offering made. It is an olah by fire, a sweet aroma to Yehovah, is what it says. Sacrifice is added. An offering made by fire added. Finally, oh no, I guess we're still, oh no, we're doing the birds. Finally, if the olah of his korban to Yehovah is of birds, then he shall bring his korban of 2 turtle doves, or, well, of turtle doves or young pigeons, usually 2, and the priest shall bring it to the altar. So he's bringing the birds, and he's really not going to do anything. The priest is going to do most of this, it looks like. It says, the priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off its head, and burn it in the altar. Its blood shall be drained on the side of the altar. It's probably going to be on well, I'm not sure what side of the altar it's going to be on. I would tend to guess it's going to be on the north side, I would think. I'm not sure. Guess those are kinds of things we'll have to find out someday, huh? Then he shall bring his offering of 2 turtle doves. The priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off its head, burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar. He shall remove, apparently the man is going to do this, shall remove the cross. So he's going to tear off the head, drain the blood, give it back to the man. The man is probably assisted with the Levite. So, I mean, I would need an assistance. I don't know where the parts of these birds are. It says, he shall remove the crop. What's a crop? With its feathers, and cast it beside the altar on the east. Oh, there it is, on the east side. Well, no, that's the scraps. That's where we're going to put the feathers. That's where we're going to put the crops. I don't think that's where we're going to put the blood. Into the place of ashes. That's the place of ashes. That's refuge that's going out. It's on its way out of the portion there. Here. It says in Leviticus, no, I guess this is the same verse. He shall remove the crop. I put it's gizzards. Gizzard. Where's the gizzard on a bird? I don't know. Maybe the gizzard is where the rocks are. That little pouch that has the rocks. That's what I'm guessing is the gizzard. Kind of like a pre-stomach. Something that's going to grind up the food. It's got just rocks and things in it. Yahweh doesn't want that burnt on his altar. With its feathers, and shall throw it near the altar eastward to the place of the ashes. Yeah, that's what is LIV? I don't even remember what LIV. LIV. Oh, I guess it's translation. LIV. Literal translation. LITV. All right. We're almost done. He shall remove the crop, feathers, cast it before the altar on the east side into the place of the ashes. Then he shall split it at its wings. He, this is the man who's bringing it, but shall not divide it completely. And the priest, that's why I say he is the man, because here's the priest, and the priest shall burn it on the altar, on the wood that is on the fire. It is an olah, by fire, a sweet aroma to Yahovah. This is what the olah is all about. Whether it's herd, whether it's ze'on, goats or flocks, or a bird, multiple birds. What is it? 2 turtle doves or a pigeon? Or 2 turtle doves or pigeons? What was it? Young pigeons, 2 young pigeons. You don't have to know about male or female, apparently. It's all about the sweet aroma that goes up to Yahovah. Well, next week, we're going to talk about the mincha, the grain offering. They always want to call it the grain offering. Let's start calling it the mincha, so that we start learning the vocabulary that Yahovah uses. Thank you for joining me today. I guess we'll see you again next week. Please, go deeper in the words. Learn some of the things that I'm trying to help you see about Israel's seed, the Ezra, the Ger. There's so much more for us to see than what is out there. Well, hey, thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you next week. Yahovah bless you real good. Bye now.